Hi there, and welcome to the latest edition of the Gersnet Weekly Podcast, the independent Rangers podcast, which is brought to you by fans for fans, and where the content is absolutely free. It is episode 166 of the Sunday flagship show. I'm your host, I'm Colin Armstrong. As I tell you every week, guys, it's not just the pod that we have here at Gersnet. If you get onto the website, you'll see that there's the forums there. Frankie's got his social media. There's a history archive on the website as well, so get yourself onto that. If you've not yet subscribed, if you like what we do here, we would ask you to subscribe to the YouTube channel. We've got over 5,000 subscribers now, which is officially more than were at the Hibs and Cove Rangers game the other night, but we'll not go into that. But if you like what we do, give us a wee subscribe, put the word out there on social media, let people know that we're here and what we do. We're going to have a wee look at Friday's game tonight against Stirling Albion, a fairly routine victory in the Scottish Cup, moving into the next round. We'll go through all that. A wee look at some of the stuff that's come out from the Aberdeen game, some of the controversy around Kevin Clancy, all that kind of thing. And another wee peek at sort of maybe some comings and goings in January. We'll also maybe have a wee chin-chin celebration at the fact that Joe Aribo will be home very shortly. Nigeria have been put out tonight. And I think I've just read somewhere that there's not enough players for any club to put in a request for the fixture to be postponed. So it would appear that it's definitely happening in the 2nd of February. So I'm joined tonight by Chris Jack and Patrick Cassie. Chris, I'll come to you first. Obviously, Glasgow Herald and Glasgow Times correspondent, Rangers man, all that kind of thing. But you were getting a wee bit of stick on Twitter tonight, weren't you? Somebody was not happy you were on.
As I said to Frankie before I came on, I people have lost you a listener and a viewer at some point. I've seen to upset someone, but you can't please all the people all the time.
No, you can't. And I can assure you, Chris, if you've lost us one, it's nowhere near the amount that I've probably lost us down the years, to be fair. So, no, it's fine. I'm also joined by Patrick Cassie. How are you, Patrick? Looking very snug there.
Yeah, I'm doing fine. I think this is my first appearance of the new year, albeit we're 23 days in. I think it's appropriate to wish everyone a happy new year. And hopefully we see as much success on the league front, at least in 2022 as we did in 21.
I would concur to that. I would concur with that. A big happy new year to you both. You're making me look like a terrible host here, Patrick. I've not got my house in order, so thanks for that. Anyway, right, on to the game, on to Friday night's game. I've got a bit of a confession to make. I had every intention of going to the game. I went through the game and into Glasgow, met my mate, and we ended up just staying in the pub, actually. We just watched it in the pub. It was quite cosy, and we just thought, we'll just watch it here. So I've been a bit of a poor supporter on that front. I didn't make the game, but I did see it. Chris, fairly routine result. I think that's what you'd expect against a team like Stirling Albion. You know, a fairly routine performance, good result. A wee bit of a strange starting 11. When I first saw the starting 11, I was trying to figure out where everybody was playing. But, you know, a good result, good performance, and good to get some fringe players some game time. And we'll come on to speak to you, obviously. We'll come on and speak about Lowry, obviously. But, you know, a few players that haven't been getting a huge amount of game time in there as well.
I think it probably ticked all the boxes for Rangers in the game. You win the game, you get through fairly comfortably. The fringe guys get a chance. Lowry takes his chance, gets his goal. Nobody picks up an injury. Nobody gets sent off. It's a fairly straightforward and pleasing night at the office. Overall, it was fairly dull. It was fairly low key in aspects, but it was always going to be that. And there was the very, very, very little chance of Stirling Albion causing Rangers many problems or causing the upset. So no, I think it was as straightforward and as comfortable as it was to be expected.
Patrick, on nights like this, you know, when it is really straightforward and there's not a huge amount of controversy, it can be a bit of a struggle for people like me to find things to talk about, you know, on the show and stuff like that when you're pulling the agenda together. But Alex Lowry is obviously the main talking point of the game. You know, he's came on 15 minutes in, and, you know, Hadji's taken a slight knock, so they've not risked it, got him off, brought the boy on. Within 15 minutes, he scored his first goal. You know, a really good performance overall. And I think, I'll come on and speak about it. I think Michael Beale was going on about how many players have came through, you know, in the last 2 or 3 years and made their debut in the first team. So overall, I mean, I felt he played really, really well on the night. You know, I know it's only Stirling Albion, and you have to take that into consideration, but the boy's only 18-year-old, and you know, it didn't look like he lacked confidence. It looked like he had a lot of belief in himself. And the goal itself, you know, he starts the move, he picks the ball up in the sort of centre of the park. Nice wee 1-2 with Bakuna, I think it is. brilliant finish and sets us on the road. So a night he'll probably never forget, and hopefully a night that sees him going on to make further appearances for the club down the line.
Yeah, it was obviously great to see him and Leon King, both B team and conveniently younger than me as well, make their appearances. I think Lowry was fantastic. I must confess I don't watch too much of the B team. Lucky enough to watch when they came to Edinburgh University and watched it live, and it was at what you'd expect of two teams of young players, but one a team of professionals and one a team of students. But I think he had all the sort of flair and style in which he sort of just fit like a glove. I think Hadji replacing him was quite apt. He sort of filled his position well, and I wouldn't be surprised if I see some people clamoring for him to get more minutes, which I think would be smart, because he almost does have the technical ability and the style in which would only work in a team that's as possession dominant as Rangers. I think a lot of people think Super Ali was talking about him going out on loan. You have to consider how much that would be beneficial for him. You might consider, as opposed to playing on the weekend, training with Rangers might be better for him. As I think Ben Williamson was a good example last year. He went to Arbroath and did really well, but then he went to Livingston and he wasn't able to sort of handle the step up, and the sort of football they were playing wasn't as conducive with his technical abilities as it was at Arbroath. And interestingly, 2 years ago I'm not sure it was actually to the day, but it was the same round. We saw both, I think, Nathan Patterson and Kai Kennedy make their debuts against, I think it was Stranraer in the 2-0 win around this time 2 years ago. So I think that could be also offer an interesting. So those are two contrasting paths. One of them is now playing, albeit not playing, but within the squad in Everton and left for a healthy chunk of change for Rangers. And the other is seemingly Hamilton not living up as of yet to the sort of promises he's showed in glimmers, especially last season. So I think it's great to talk about Alex Lowry and how well he does, but I think we should all temper our expectations. And I don't think this fantastic performance, albeit against Stirling Albion, is really going to change a lot for him in the next 6 months, albeit I do expect that we will see him on the team sheet a few more times, and that he will probably train with the first team in that capacity more often. I think that'll be incredibly beneficial for him, and just a point of pride for all of us fans to see another one coming through the youth academy.
Chris, on that point that Patrick's just made there, he's sort of suggesting it doesn't, he'll maybe make the odd appearance here and there, on maybe an appearance on the bench, that kind of thing. I was reading comments today by Van Bronckhorst, and he was sort of going on about his own pathway through the Feyenoord setup, and he got into the team at a very young age. And I just kind of wonder, and I always felt under advocate as well, that young players got their chance, you know what I mean? Because that's a very Dutch thing, they can sort of view it, if you're good enough, you're old enough and you're in the team. So is there a small possibility that if he comes in and does well, that Van Bronckhorst would trust him, I think, because that's the Dutch way. So there's maybe a better chance of him getting more game time now under Van Bronckhorst than he would have, say, under Gerrard.
There's maybe a Joe Aribo-sized problem now standing in his way now. That if you're looking for a number 10, I think Joe's got the jersey. But Gio has mentioned that a couple of times. He likes to bring in the talent, as he calls it, now the young players from the academy. His coaching staff is set up to bring the best out of the academy, and it is something that Rangers have to get better at. I wrote a piece in the paper about a fortnight or so ago, saying Nathan Patterson has to be the first of many. It's great having Patterson coming through the ranks and doing so well, winning the title and getting his move, but the academy is there to serve the first team. Having won Nathan Patterson every 3-4 seasons doesn't really justify the expense and the time and the effort that goes into the academy. You're looking at a couple coming through every couple of seasons. If Alec Lowry can be the next one to come through, great. Hopefully there's then more to follow, but it is something that Rangers have to get better at. It's part of the football model. It's part of the club business model to bring these young players through, develop them, help win things with Rangers, and then sell them on. So fingers crossed there's more to come, and it would be interesting if Alec Lowry does get more chances. He's certainly done his chances no harm at all. And Van Bronckhorst, I think, showed a lot of faith in him on Friday night. The easy option would have been stick James Sands on, stick Scott Wright on. He thought, no, this is a game with this young boy. He can go on, he can make an impact. I think that if you had a young player, the fact that Gio was willing to make that call as early and put him in and trust him to go and make an impact, I think that gives you your aspirations of making that step a fairly significant boost.
On that again, like this whole sort of football model you were talking about, that sort of ties in with what Michael Beale tweeted the other day, saying it's like the 12th academy player to make their first team debut since Beale arrived, with Steven Gerrard in 2018. And it kind of ties in as well with that, what Stuart Robertson was saying. I don't know if you listened to the Athletic podcast a couple of weeks ago, and there was some pieces in the paper around it as well. But that was something that he spoke about as well, that they were really building the club up from scratch, and that was one of the areas they were looking at. So do you see a sign now that what's been planned and what's been put into place is now starting to, reap rewards and produce players that are good enough for the first team? If
you think back to the third division League One campaign, there's a lot of younger players in that squad, but the youth development system as a whole had been neglected by the regime, and also it was then neglected for some time until regime change. It's only really been since then the club have actually been able to focus and put appropriate staffing levels and appropriate levels of finance into the academy. That's going to take time to materialise. They're going to get things wrong, they're going to get things right. I know Craig Mulholland and Ross Wilson are big fans of the best v best, that they've tried that. They're now trying the Lowland League. It's going to take time to get all these aspects to actually work. I think that rise of Patterson has shown what's possible. There's no reason why there can't be, as I said, another one after him, another one after him, and that has to be the way that the Rangers operate. I remember speaking to Craig Mulholland easily 5 years or so ago, maybe, and we're talking about learning from your Benficas and your Ajax and Porto and that kind of model. And there's no reason why Rangers can't be one of the best academies in Europe. You look at the pulling power they've got, you look at the infrastructure the club's got. There's no reason why we can't produce the best Scottish players going. And that has to be the ambition. That has to be the goal for Rangers, to churn out players of that required quality, not guys that are going to go and play League One down south or maybe go and play Championship. We need to produce Champions League level footballers, and there's no reason why they can't over the coming years.
What about yourself, Patrick? Do you see that whole sort of infrastructure and that part of the football business improving? We are producing more young players, they are getting their opportunities, and if they're not good enough for Rangers, they go in somewhere else. If it turns out they're wanted, but we've got the league down the road, which obviously has bigger clubs and more money. If we produce someone of that level, then we're reaping the rewards as we did with Patterson. So are you seeing that the same sort of situation that Chris is talking about there, that it seems to be improving, that something that we weren't good at for a long, long time now seems to be turning?
Well, I think you can probably pin some similarities to Jordan Campbell's article in The Athletic recently about the scouting and recruitment department and the progression in terms of the framework and structure over the past 10 years and how it was non-existent, to how now we have a sort of functional, multi-stream, advanced, modern scouting and recruitment department, and that's probably similar to the youth department. Obviously, we had a good chance when we were down in League Two and League One to sort of focus and give tons of minutes to young players, but obviously with the lack of funds, we're not able to sort of cultivate the optimum players, though we do probably now have the investment, and it seems to be paying off. I think if you track the B team as well, I think Alex Lowry is just one of many who seem very successful. I know the guys at Heart and Hand do a weekly pod with the B team, and they talk really highly of obviously Leon King, Adam Lowry, but his centre-back partner, I think, is called Lewis McKinnon. There's Robbie Ure up top, and maybe the crown jewel is Tony Weston, albeit not officially. It depends how you define a Rangers product, because he came up here when he was 16, but I think he's at 30 goals in all competitions already, which is frankly frightening, and he's definitely someone who should maybe be looking to step up and not play Lowland League football for the next 6 months, because I think it's probably the point of diminishing return, because he's performed so well. But I think it's really encouraging. I think it's also in a broader Scottish football context. It's also good to see Dundee United doing it more so. I think they've reaped the rewards somewhat when they sold Gersnet to Villa for I think it was around 850 guaranteed, upwards to 2 million. And genuinely, it's good to see that we're having this sort of transition from the playing journeyman. Rangers, admittedly, a bit, but less so than the rest. But we are seeing a sort of, maybe not a youth revolution, but we are giving both the Rangers and the league as a whole more opportunities to young players. And I think to go back to when you mentioned Van Bronckhorst, famously during his, I think it was the 16-17 season, he handed a debut to Tyrell Malacia at the age of 16 in the Eredivisie. and Orkun Kokcu at the age of 17, who's now both of them worth upwards of like 10 million euros. So he does seem to be willing and happy to do so. So let's hope we reap the benefits from it.
Chris, from the young to the more established, and to James Tavernier, Lowry's given us the lead. We're 1-0 up. It already feels like it's going to be a fairly comfortable night. Get the penalty, go 2-0. But he had 2 penalties on the night, and obviously with Tavernier, there's been he was on them, he was off them. He was on them for so long. He was so consistent. Then he had a few misses. Roof's been taking them recently. So when Tav stepped up the other night, you thought, this is maybe him making a claim again. But scores one, misses one. So you would think that when Roof comes back in the team, he'll be back on them.
Yeah, I would imagine so. I think Tav's biggest problem was going the same way. It's always the biggest when you get 2, especially in such a short space of time. It's always a dilemma. Do you go the same way? He obviously did. I thought the keeper actually made a fairly decent save. wasn't a great penalty. It was a bad height from a a good height for a keeper, as they say. Basically, no. I think the problem for Gio is it has to be somebody that's going to play almost every week. And right now, I'm not convinced Kamal Roof plays every single week in that side. Tav obviously does. I wonder if he might try and move it around as Joe Aribo, somebody that can maybe step up and could take that role instead, maybe. But I think it shows a lot of bottle. I know I was only Stirling Albion at Ibrox, but Tav is well aware of the scrutiny that comes around him in penalties now after missing a few. So it does say a lot about him. He is still willing to step up and take them. But it'll be interesting to see who takes the next one, which will come around fairly soon because Rangers penalty Rangers. And it was a good moment for the keeper. I can't remember his name, but apparently he went through the Rangers youth team and all that kind of thing. He was part of the Rangers youth setup. So a good moment for him, something that he'll always remember. Patrick, I was wanting to talk about Bacuna. He's kind of had a stop-start sort of beginning to his Rangers career. When he has come on and when he's got a bit of game time, I think there's wee moments that make you think there could be a player in there, but he's maybe just not imposing himself on games enough. Maybe just his style at the moment is not different from the Scottish game. But 2 assists the other night, and overall, I thought he played very well. Again, you've got to take the level of the opposition into account. But I sometimes think these kind of games, if you're not getting game time and you come in a game like this, it just gives you the confidence to, start pushing and knocking on the door of the first team. And I don't think he done his sort of claims any harm. I thought he put in a good performance on the night. Yeah,
I'd agree. I think his second assist, more so than the first, was aesthetically pleasing. Nice outside the boot pass to Sakala. Funnily enough, I was talking to one of my flatmates said he thought he was terrible, and he cited his he had a really bad turnover early on in the game when he just a really slack pass close to our box, and then Stirling Albion had something, but we quickly closed it down. But if that was a better team, you have to think that they would take advantage of that. But I think he generally is quite a polarizing player, often scapegoated. I think he did really well in Gerrard's final game against Ross County. He obviously got the goal, and when Gio came in, I thought he would be the one to play the sort of role Arfield's playing now. That was a bit foolish. Maybe it was the country connection, thinking he might vow for his fellow countrymen or whatnot. But I expected him to have at least played a more substantial role in the past 2 months. I don't know if this performance does much to sort of increase his chance in the pecking order, because he does have he is at least role homeless, maybe positionally homeless in the current system we play. He's probably not defensively solid enough or secure in possession to play as either the double pivot when we play a 4-2-3-1, and obviously Kamara plays there every day of the week. And then with Sands coming in, he's likely to play Davis when fit, and he's also probably not consistent enough when it comes to an attacking threat to play either as the 10 or even out on the right. So I think it is he's kind of fallen victim to circumstances in the way that we haven't played to his strengths. But when he's come on, he hasn't exactly thrown his hat in to make the idea that we should play to his strengths. But I agree. I don't think what we saw against Stirling Albion will do him any. It'll do him a few favours. I don't think it'll do him anything wrong. You have to consider the level of the opposition, but he was quite decent, and I think definitely pass marks. And like most of the people, were decent without being spectacular.
Another one that came in, Chris, said to Ted, he's been recalled from loan. I thought he was a wee bit unlucky to be put out on loan. I thought he'd done enough last season to continue at the club and try and increase his game time here. For whatever reason, maybe Gio fancies him, I don't know, but he's been recalled anyway. Obviously, Jermaine Defoe's went the other way, so that's maybe had a bearing on the decision, I don't know. But I was desperate for him to score, you know what I mean? Because he's been away, and I think he kind of needed it. I don't think he's had a great time away on loan. He missed it. I don't think it did cross the line, but it looked pretty close. The chance he had earlier on, he probably should have scored. So it was good to see him get his goal, and he looked delighted with it. He looked happy to be back, delighted that he got his goal. And again, hopefully, it's given him the confidence to go on and contribute in this running, because we're going to need goals. There'll be games when things aren't going our way, and he's another option. Someone that you can fling on and give us something different.
I spoke to a couple of guys out in Germany that cover Fürth 2-3 weeks, about a fortnight or so, when he said that came back, and it seemed to be a change of their system, almost like forced him out of the Fürth side. He was brought in to play a certain role. Fürth had to change their way of playing, basically because they were getting beat every week in the Bundesliga, and he seemed to kind of pay the price for that. Fell out the team towards the end of his time there. Didn't really look like he was going to get back in the way that they were approaching games. So I think it was probably the best for all parties that he came back. Is he going to be a starting striker for Rangers? I'm still not convinced. I think he does have something. I do quite like him. Am I convinced by him that I trust him to go and score 20 goals a season? Probably not. But if he can chip in with 10, and he can chip in with 10 important ones, he's played just as important a role as the guy that goes and scores 20, 25. I think he does have a part to play in the squad. I think he can be more clinical. But as I say, Colin, I think you saw what it meant to him to be back and to get his goal. If he'd come off the park the other night, having not scored, it'd been another week and he'd chip away at the confidence. Yeah. The fact that he got that goal, having had such a frustrating end to his time in Germany, he really needed to come back and press, get the fans back on side and just get off and running. And obviously now with Alfredo being away, Kamara Roof not being 100% fit, and still trying to get himself back up to speed, there is chances there if I said that, get himself a couple of goals over the next couple of games. He potentially leads the line at Parkhead next week.
See, the thing I like about him is he's just such an honest player, I think. You know what I mean? I agree. I don't think he's shown enough, to be Rangers number 9. I think that's clear. When you consider the players in front of him, I don't think he's done anywhere near enough to sort of move those people about, or move them out of the team, But I do think he'd done enough last season to increase his game time this season, to start really improving in terms of the amount of game time he was getting and his contribution to the team. And I was a wee bit surprised when he got moved out in the summer there on loan, but glad to see him back, I must admit. And I was so chuffed to get his goal, because especially after that miss in the first half, you kind of thought, like as you said, it could maybe have a big impact on his confidence if he'd come off against Stirling Albion, a club he would probably be looking to score against without scoring. So yeah, chuffed he got his goal. Another one who got his goal, Patrick, was Sakala, so he can cut his hair, So that's us. We're all relieved now. Again, Bacuna, great ball through to him. One touch finish, that kind of thing. And again, looking at the fixtures that are coming up, particularly the game at Celtic Park in a couple of weeks or a week and a half or whatever it is, good that 2 strikers got in the score sheet, gave them confidence, because I do think they'll play some part in these games, because obviously Morelos is going to be away. So to have the 2 strikers scoring, it was good. And it was good to see Sakala, because I think he is, to me, very much a confidence player. I think the more goals he gets, it increases the chances that he's going to score, if you know what I mean, because his confidence just goes up and up. So delighted that he got his goal.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting to see him play on the left, because usually he either plays centrally or on the right, obviously filling in for Kent. But yeah, I think he very much is a confidence player. I think early on he struggled, he showed flashes, and then it clicked when he got the hat-trick against Motherwell, and then he looked dangerous in the games following. And his per 90 numbers are really good. Given the fact he hasn't played much, but he's got goals in limited time. I do think he will definitely have a part to play in the coming games, most certainly at Celtic Park, given the fact that we will likely, for the most part, play out of possession, want to hit them on the break, because they famously play such possession-dominant football, and they must have 6 in the attack when they attack. and that leaves lots of spaces, especially out wide with their inverted wing backs. So I think Sakala is probably our number one option to sort of send it long to him and let him sort of play and run with it. Which I mean, early on in the game when it was quite attritional against Stirling Albion, he was probably our only option. You'd put out him on the left. Their right back would try and stick tight to him. Sakala would beat him, and then he'd run into someone or he'd sort of scuff a shot. So it wasn't quite coming off for him with an end product, but it was exciting to see him sort of the dynamic winger that we hoped to see when he came in. Step overs, beating players. Again, you have to temper your expectations because it is Stirling Albion, and both technically and athletically they'll be subpar compared to the rest of the competition we face in any other competition. But it was nice to see him, and I think, as you mentioned, more so than anyone, this will do a world of good for his confidence, and he won't treat that goal like it was against only a League Two team. I think it was a really good finish, and hopefully an indication of what's to come.
Yeah, it's always nice to see that smile he has, I must admit. He's a likeable chap. Guys, I think we need to have a conversation about John Lundstrom. I mean, he obviously got 90 minutes on Friday, got an assist, played well, done okay. But you do kind of get the feeling, he's came in all right. There was no transfer fee, but he's on a decent salary, I believe. If you believe rumours, he's the highest earner at the club. He wasn't brought in to play in these types of games. He wasn't brought in to get 90 minutes against Stirling Albion and then be a bit part player in other games. I think he was one of Gerrard's, if not the main signing of his pre-season, and it doesn't seem to be working out from Chris. I've seen rumours that he's maybe linked with down south. Where do you think John Lundstrom's Rangers career is at the moment? Because at this present moment in time, it's hard to see how it's going to work out from that. It's going to be a successful Rangers career because it just can't seem to get a start in the team or a decent amount of game time.
I think you've summed it up fairly well there, Colin. I just don't see how he fits into Gio's team. I don't see him being able to justify the outlay in terms of his wages. And I think if Rangers could almost not cut the losses, they also didn't pay a fee for him, but I think if they could ship him out, I think that money could be better utilised in other areas of the squad. I know he was a popular signing in the summer. I think people were quite excited to see how he'd do when he came in, but almost from that Malmo game, it's never really kicked on from there. Played well up at Dens Park, and people were saying, that can be the start of him. It was Dundee, with all due respect to Dundee. That's the type of game he should be running. He should be dominating these games. If you now look, he should be starting European games. He's not going to. He should be starting Old Firm games. He's not going to. If everyone's fit, he doesn't play. And for the calibre of the signing, the outlay they put into him, that's not what you're needing. I know Middlesbrough are interested in him. A couple other Championship teams interested. I think if he doesn't go this month, he goes in the summer, and all parties just say, look, thanks, but no thanks. It's not worked out. No hard feelings, but I think it's probably best that it goes their separate ways. The fact that he's not played that often under Van Bronckhorst tells you he's not in his plans. Clearly doesn't fancy him, and I think it's probably going to be best if there's an early departure.
What about you, Patrick? I mean, obviously a change in managers had an impact here, but he was struggling before that. I mean, there was a wee period for about 2 or 3 weeks. I do remember thinking, we're starting to see the best of him now. There was 2 or 3 games where he really did show what he was capable of, and I started to think, no, this is it. He's turned the corner. You're going to see what this guy is capable of, and it's just not materialised. He just can't seem to get in that team. So, I mean, obviously, change of managers had an impact, but he was struggling before that. So, is there any reason you can think of as to why this hasn't worked out?
No, I completely agree with Chris. I think the sooner all parties cut ties and thank each other, hopefully we get some sort of feedback. I mean, that would just be nice on top, the better. I think given the initial reaction to the signing, at least for me, it was quite perplexing. He obviously had that great season in his first year in the Premier League, and then struggled almightily in the second, albeit that was from his general team suffered as well. But it was quite confusing because he's a defensive midfielder, 6, rather conservative. He does well at breaking up play and playing backwards inside passes. But that's not the sort of player that we, as with our financial standing, pay big money to get. You can find someone in most teams in the Scottish Premiership who can do 80% of that and get them on a free. I think Jandro Fuchs is a good example. But you pay the big bucks for someone who's going to have a game-altering intervention, like a winger or a striker or centre-back. So I thought it was quite weird off the bat. Obviously, it was a Gerrard signing. I think they made that clear both in all the press releases, the interviews, and I think just the natural connection as both being from Liverpool made it sort of natural as well. But yeah, I think he looked decent for a month under the sort of late Gerrard tenure, and I think people were, like you said, starting to think this is what we're about to see from him. But it just went off the boil, I think, considering the fact that he's up against both Glenn Kamara, who's technically superior and probably better in every single facet of the game besides maybe his running, and Davis, who's a club legend and technically superior as well. It was always hard for him to sort of cement his place within the weekly team sheet. And the rumours, at least, I don't know if they're true or not, the wage packet he's on, the apparent friction that caused with Connor Goldson isn't going to help at all either. I think people are, if he's our highest paid player, you'd expect him to justify that and be the best player on the park, but he's surely not done that. So I think whether it be in the winter or in the summer, it would be good to sort of cut our losses and get a fee. I think Middlesbrough seems to be the likely destination. It seems quite natural given that Chris Wilder is there and he was his manager at Sheffield United.
Before I move on, Chris, do you think that's had an impact, the fact that he's, the highest earner? Is that been an issue in terms of I'm gelling into the squad and settling in? I mean, I'm not saying that he's a disruptive character, but it's what he gets paid is what the club value him at is largely not down to him. I'm obviously they'll have negotiations, but the club are willing to pay that on him. They're prepared to pay that salary. He's not doing that to piss anyone else off in the dressing room. But is that hindered the process of him having a successful Rangers career, that he's come in and maybe one or two others within that dressing room are thinking, well, wait a minute, I've contributed to the league season here, I've done this, I've done that, and this guy just walks in and all of a sudden he's a top earner. Is that maybe been an issue bubbling away in the background, do you think? It's
probably only a question that John himself can answer, whether he feels any external pressure or any pressure himself from, if he thinks, well, I need to almost justify myself as a new signing, but I need to justify myself even more because I know what I'm being paid compared to guys that have played Europa League and have won leagues. Only he will know if that's had an impact. I just think his career, Rangers also didn't have a great start to the season. That coincided with his early struggles, and he's just, even as Rangers have stepped up gears at times, he's just never really got going. As Patrick said, I don't see him fitting into the side as such. He doesn't really seem to be a Van Bronckhorst type. I think he's a bit slow, a bit ponderous. He's not. I just don't see how he's ever going to be a starter in a Van Bronckhorst side. And if he's not going to be a starter, there's no point in him being here. You can't have guys on his money that are going to play against Stirling Albion or come off the bench just to help see games out. Now, as Patrick said, there's guys all around the league you could pick up for next to nothing to be able to come in and put a couple of tackles in the last 5 minutes of the games. You're needing him to be doing more than that. I just don't think we've seen anywhere near enough to suggest that he can turn the corner, unfortunately.
Last comment on Friday's game, guys. Arran Athletic in the next round, a team that still runs a shudder through my spine. I remember that game at Ibrox we got beaten on. I can count in one hand how many times I left Ibrox early. I left early that day. Let's put it that way. The minute the second goal went in, I just stormed off in a huff. But I'm sure it'll be different this time around. Been 13 years since we've won the Scottish Cup, Chris. I think it's 6 years since we were last in the final. The jerseys in the background there from the 2009 final. We need to have a strong run in this competition. Surely it's long overdue that we reach the final, let alone win it.
Rangers' record in both cup competitions is abysmal. Frankly, it's nowhere near good enough for a club of our standing, a squad of that quality. And it was obviously the major failing of Steven Gerrard, and the fact that they didn't win at least one of the cups last season, no matter how great the season was in terms of 55. it was a huge failure that they didn't go in and then capitalise on that and get another bit of silverware. The less said about Hibs at Hampden this season, the better. We'll just not mention that again. I think there's a bit of pressure on the Scottish Cup this year. The league is obviously, for so many reasons, in terms of winning the league and building on 55, and also the Champions League and the finances. The league is huge. But again, if you got to the end of the season and it was only the league, I think there would be a bit of disappointment amongst the fans, and certainly a bit of disappointment amongst the squad and the manager. Gio has made it clear he's here to win things. There's no reason why Rangers can't go on and win the Scottish Cup. So a kind draw to them. Looking forward to getting back down to Hampden. Not been there for a while. Looking forward to that one. But it should be a fairly straightforward one, you would think.
Patrick, I shudder to think what age you were the last time Rangers won the Scottish Cup.
Yeah, I mean, my age shows, I think, that my lack of experience with Scottish Cups. I would probably take a European run, at least over the League Cup, probably not the Scottish Cup, but I think I just looked at, we've won 4 Scottish Cups while I've been alive, and I think, was it 7, 8 the last time? I would have been 6 years old the last time we won the Scottish Cup. So hopefully we can win one soon. And I do think we're probably set up quite good. I mean, obviously, I think Aberdeen are playing Motherwell. St John's turning around. Celtic are home to Raith. You'd expect them to go through. I think if we can avoid them as long as possible, meet them in the final, probably be ideal. But I'd back us to win it. And I think there does seem to be a revitalised energy to do well in the Cups after sort of a re-evaluation when Gerrard left. People looked at his tenure. We saw, obviously, he did what he was asked to do, but there was an appetite for silverware out with the league, which wasn't satisfied. And I think that's something probably Gio was addressed and probably took on. And once sort of goals and objectives season on season, I think this is a perfect way to start, especially given the fact his arrival was clouded by our poor performance in the League Cup semis. So that might be obviously one of the big 2 goals for him this season.
Yeah, I mean, Gio's sort of steadied the ship in terms of conceding, and that always gives you a chance in a cup competition, doesn't it? If you're not conceding a lot of goals, it gives you a big chance. And I'm just desperate to see us win a cup again. You know, it was great to win the league last season, but yeah, a wee day out at Hampden in May, it's long overdue. Right, guys, on to the previous week, the return after the break, the winter break, the rescheduled winter break. I should point out, but we'll not go too much into that. Don't want to go too much into the game. I think we need to focus more on the sort of aftermath and the fallout from it. But Chris, overall, I mean, on the performance and the result itself, it was kind of typical, and it was kind of my fear when they rescheduled the break. You know, Rangers had a great run of momentum through December. You know, they were in great form. A couple of stutters in terms of performances, but getting results when they weren't playing well, they were digging them out. And other games that were playing really well, convincing wins, all that kind of thing. And we were motoring, you know, we were in a really, really strong position going into those 2 games at Pittodrie and Celtic Park. And then obviously the COVID things kicked off, they've rescheduled the winter break. And my worry was, you know, over the last few years when it comes to winter breaks, we're slow starters. And going to Pittodrie is not the best place to be going if you're slow starters coming back for a break. And that's kind of how it felt. You know, a disappointing performance and very disappointing result.
I just never really got going, didn't show anywhere near enough going forward. I thought it'd really get flat, a bit lacklustre, nothing, a bit kind of lacking a bit of invention, lacking ideas. Morelos had no service. I thought it was just a bit, I say flat and quite a strange performance. I know that there have been aspects of some of the away games or some of the performance under Gio that was almost like the worst of every part of it. Nothing just seemed to get going. And the fact that it was, if it had been a St Bernard and D&T at Ibrox, they'd have probably got through it. I think they could have played that to that level and still got through it. You can't play that way and expect to get anything from Pittodrie. I thought Aberdeen did play quite well. They certainly deserved their point. I think in the end it was actually probably a good point for Rangers just to get out of town with unbeaten record still going. But have to be far better than that, because if they turn in too many performances like that over the next few weeks, it's amazing how quickly momentum can shift in a title race.
Patrick, looking at the sort of fallout from it, I mean, Rangers' poor performance aside, we have to look at the performance of Kevin Clancy on the night, and I mean, it was the 2 worst refereeing performances I've seen in the last few years have been from Clancy, from Kevin Clancy. One was the game at Celtic Park when we won 2-1. another was the other night. And I don't like going down the road of saying, referees are cheating and all this kind of thing, but some of the decisions were so bad and so consistently bad that it's hard not to think that there's a bit of, foul play in action here. You know what I mean? The sending off of Ryan Kent was horrific. It's as bad a sending off as I think I've seen. I don't think any of them were bookings, and the one that resulted in the red was just embarrassing. And the sight of Kevin Clancy walking off with Scott Brown laughing and joking after the game, I don't think that's a good look either, to be honest with you, considering how the game went. So how did you feel about Clancy and his performance? What were your views on it? Because mine was, it's probably as poor a performance as I've seen from a referee in a long time.
Yeah, you're preaching to the choir. I think I tweeted after it was the sequel no one wanted to his Old Firm 2019 performance. And interestingly, with the Clancy and Scott Brown having jokes and walking off, I remember Gio Van Sunis had tweeted a Photoshop of, I forget which referee, smiling with Tav walking off, and the amount of outrage that got.
Was it no Beaton? I think it was John Beaton.
Maybe, probably John Beaton to play into the brother Beaton patter. But this was genuine and, quite frightening. But I think we all need to rewire our expectations for referees. It's an incredibly difficult job, and we have semi-pros doing it here. But I don't think that excuses how poor of a performance it was at Pittodrie. I think the foul count was 21-7 in our favour, or not in our favour rather, but so that's incredible, 3 times the amount of fouls, and you can't even rationalise it by saying Aberdeen dominated the game. I think the possession stats were fairly even, the pass numbers were fairly even. I think the Tab yellow card was almost as bad as the second Kent yellow. I think it was just a comedy of errors, and then the backlash for Rangers rightfully entering dialogue with the SFA regarding it, and then the really poor journalism we saw, I forgot from who, about or trying to make up the idea that Kevin Clancy's been axed from the next game week as a result of his poor performance, when it was actually he was just on the rota and it's his break week, was really poor and not a good sight for the sustainability of sports journalism in the country.
What about yourself, Chris? There has a story came out tonight. I think it's on the Daily Record, suggesting that he has been axed. He's not on any of the midweek fixtures, but someone, as Patrick pointed out, I can't mind who it was, but someone's pointed out that wasn't the case. That this was announced, before all the business and the fallout from the Aberdeen game. As Patrick pointed out, it's just his week off, so to speak. He wasn't officiating in these games anyway, so he hasn't been axed. He hasn't been dropped. He's not facing any sort of sanctions for his poor performance. And on his performance, how bad did you rank it? Because it's one of the worst I think I've seen, to be honest with you.
I think Kevin Clancy should be dropped permanently. I think he's just not a very good referee. Almost every time you see him, he makes mistakes, and not just small mistakes. It's big mistakes. It's things that just shouldn't be happening. I don't think there's anything untoward or underhand or cheating or anything like that. I don't buy into those theories. I just think he's not very good at his job. And whether going full time is going to improve that, or whether doing other coaching courses is going to improve that, or whether he just can't do the job, only he knows. He'll have to decide if he is a top flight referee, and the SFA will need to decide if he's a top flight referee. But it takes quite some doing to have both sets of supporters on your back as much. The Rangers fans gave him stick for 90 minutes. Aberdeen fans gave him stick for 90 minutes. And it's quite something to be called out so furiously by both sets of supporters. You must be driving down the road thinking, I've not had a good night here. Is this really for me? As you both said, a really, really poor performance. I don't think it had any impact on how Rangers played. Rangers didn't deserve to win the game, but that's a very separate issue. Just because Rangers didn't win the game, they're still quite entitled to have concerns over how the game was refereed. And I think it speaks into a wider conversation of refereeing standards in Scotland. At this minute, the standard isn't high enough, the quality isn't good enough, our referees aren't good enough for the level of football that we've got, and it has to be solved soon. So whether it's more training, whether it's going full time, I don't think the VAR coming in is going to be the switch that just flicks it and everything's going to be hunky-dory from that moment on. If anything, it's only going to get worse, and we're going to have more kind of full outrage on both sides, and there's going to be stuff flying around over nitpicking on it, even more nitpicking level than we're already used to. So it is something that the SPFL, the SFA really have to look at, because at the minute the referees aren't good enough for the job.
And in terms of, like, this is all about decision making, Chris. When you consider the involvement that Scott Brown had in the game, and if Kevin Clancy's got any sort of sense of, it's obvious I'm not having a good game here, both sets of supporters, Rangers fans are having a go at me. I did chuckle when I heard the Aberdeen fans saying you're just a Hun with a whistle. That made me laugh a lot, I must admit, because if there's one thing Kevin Clancy's not, you know what I mean? But he must have had a sense that he kind of lost control of the game a wee bit, you know what I mean? It wasn't going the way that it should have went. What makes him think that it's appropriate to laugh and joke with someone who was involved in the flashpoint at the end with Ryan Kent going off the field? I mean, even that as a decision-making process, surely as a referee you just think, right, get out the road of the players, shake their hands, get everybody off up the tunnel and get everybody back down the road and everyone's fine. To be laughing and joking with them after that player was involved in a flashpoint, and he's waving Ryan Kent off the park and all that kind of thing. Again, it's not a good look.
No, it's not. I say, once he's blown the full-time whistle, he shakes Herbie's hands, he stands there, waits for his assistants to come on, lets the players go off, and then up the tunnel. And whatever happens, if you then get approached by players or management, whatever, and they want to go through various decisions, do that up the tunnel. There was no need for him to walk off in that manner, and it just speaks to making bad decisions. That it wasn't the worst one that he made all night, but it certainly wasn't a good look.
Patrick, moving on for Wednesday night and looking forward to the sort of the remaining days of the January window now. I've seen a lot of angst on Twitter amongst the Rangers Twitter at day business, day something, Rangers just day things, that kind of thing. I must admit, I feel a wee bit more relaxed about it. My concern is keeping players. I think the squad that we have now is more than good enough to put in a strong challenge and probably win this league title. So I'm not that bothered about people coming in. I'm more worried about just keeping the players that we've got. But a lot of fans are demanding signings, demanding that some of the Patterson money is reinvested. Can you see Rangers doing anything? Do you want them to do anything, or are you quite relaxed about the whole thing?
No, I generally concur with your sentiments. I think as the squad is currently constructed, it's more than good enough to go and win the league. I think it's a mix of angst from the other side doing quite a lot of business. Whether you think it's good or not is up to your own decision. And some people generally feeling that we're not as secure in the title race as they once thought. So they're sort of preempting maybe some excuses or something in which to point the finger at upon the end of the season, because it's getting a bit nervous. We're both getting into the second half of the season. And obviously we've just dropped points against Aberdeen. But I think I'm probably more concerned with some outgoings. I'd like us to shift on some of the players who never got the Rangers career going. I think Lundstrom is probably one of the best examples. Albeit he might get as a fee. I think Jack Simpson and Brandon Barker, albeit Brandon Barker's contract expires at the end of the season, but I just like to see us get him off the books. It's not worth for either party, and just get him playing football somewhere and enjoying it. And I think Jack Simpson, albeit he's tied down quite extensively, and he came in just 12 months ago, I think he's showing that he really has no future at Rangers. He wasn't terrible against Stirling, playing left back of all positions, but I just think given our centre back depth and Leon King being promoted, there's no spot for him. Beyond that, I think we might see one transfer, I would assume. I think that might be pandering to the sort of demands of the support, but also a sign that we do have the money and we will reinvest it, whether that be a right winger, or a lot of people are also asking for a sort of a box 8. Is up to the decision. But I do definitely agree. The most important thing is maintaining our assets and perhaps extending them so we have a better position when it comes to bids in the summer, hopefully after a league title, and increase the value. I think Aribo, Kent, and Morales are probably the forebearers of that. We need to get all three tied down if we have any aspirations of selling them for big, or them coming back and leading a Champions League charge. But I think the most important thing is we don't sell any of our top players, because that would be bordering on competitive suicide.
Chris, what about you? Do you see any sort of movement? I mean, I think we have to be mindful here that Rangers have done some business in January. We've brought in Sands. Obviously, Souttar signed a pre-contract. There's talk that he might come before the window closes this month. Interesting to note he wasn't in the squad yesterday when they were playing Auchinleck Talbot in the Scottish Cup. I don't think Rangers have been slow here or slack. I think they've done some good business, and some of it is long term. They're looking at rebuilding the team, because it does kind of feel like this summer's going to be a big moment. I think it could be the breaking up of this squad. So do you see them doing any other business, or do you think what they're doing at the moment, just maintaining the guys that we've got? Bearing in mind we've got Ryan Jack, hopefully, to come back. We've got Hollander to come back. Leo Balogun came back into the squad the other night. I think Rangers are in a fairly strong position here.
I think, much like you've both said, guys, I think the squad as it stands is good enough to go on and win the league. But I think the kind of angst and the animosity, if you like, it's because people know what's at stake. It's almost a £40 million gamble. Getting Champions League this season or not getting Champions League this season is huge for the next couple of seasons for Rangers, Celtic, whatever side of that you're on. It's huge in terms of finances and infrastructure, everything about the club. So it's almost, do you gamble and hope that it pays off, or do you speculate to accumulate? I'd expect Rangers to do something. I think they could still do with another option at right back to replace Nathan Patterson. I would like to see another forward option, somebody to play on the right, somebody that's a bit quicker, a bit trickier to come in and play on that side. If they don't do those deals, I still think Rangers will win the league. If they do those deals, I think that just increases their chances of winning the league. If they can then get Jack Simpson out and John Souttar in, it balances up the squad, balances up the books. I think that'd be a good bit of business as well. So an interesting week coming up.
Moving on, sort of final point for the night, Chris. We've got Livingston on Wednesday. I think it's Ross County next Saturday, and then the big game at Celtic Park. How are you feeling? I mean, don't want to take the games against Livingston and Ross County for granted, but assuming that we win those games, how big a game is this game at Celtic Park, and how do you, bearing in mind that Rangers won't have any supporters in there, we'll be missing Morelos. How do you think Rangers are sort of sitting in terms of taking that game on and winning it?
If you offered me a 4-point lead leaving Parkhead next Wednesday night, I would take it. I think you also don't want to take Ross County and Livy for granted. Livy at Ibrox should take care of itself. Celtic also struggled up at Dingwall earlier on in the season. That's not going to be an easy one, but again, they should come through it. I think they're more than capable of going to Parkhead and winning. Also having Aribo back is a huge boost. Celtic missing a couple of players. I still think there's doubts over how good Celtic actually are. I know they're hitting a wee bit of form over the last few weeks. They're obviously making signings. I still think they can be got at. I still think they can be beaten at Parkhead. And if they could go to Parkhead and win, that's a huge statement of intent win. If they can see off these next two games and then go there, open up a bit of a lead again, that can really lay the foundations for Rangers then kicking on over the next few weeks. And it becomes very difficult to catch us. If it goes the other way, the whole momentum swings, and we could potentially be playing catch up for the first time in a long time in the league. So that's a really significant few days. I would be happy with a 4-point lead after it, though, and I'm fairly confident that we won't be any worse off than that.
What about yourself, Patrick? Obviously, the sort of proviso is here that everything goes well against Livingston and Ross County, and we're going into that game with the 4-point lead. How are you feeling? Do you feel confident? Does no fans make you feel a bit nervous? Aribo coming back, does that give you confidence? How are you feeling going into this game? Because my own feeling is, I've just got a wee bit of fear that with the law of averages, they're maybe actually due something. They've no won against us for the best part of 2 years, in the league. So there is that sort of thing in the back of my mind, thinking, what, they maybe actually might just be due something here. How are you feeling?
Yeah, I think obviously it's an important game in both teams, and it's an important juncture in the season. But I think it's far more important for Celtic than for us. I think if they fail to get anything out of the game, that would be incredibly concerning, given the fact that this is perhaps not personnel-wise, because their central creativity and structure will dissipate without Callum McGregor Turnbull or Rogic, I think that'll really, really hurt them. Rogic and McGregor especially, I think McGregor's broken his cheekbone is what's reported. So if he's out, I think that's massive. He's probably their best and most important player. Rogic similarly has been on a real purple patch in the last 2 seasons. But if they fail to get anything, not necessarily the league's over and Rangers have won it, but I think it puts them in even more so of a chasing position, because the league, as all leagues, just the dynamic in Scotland, are won and lost in the old firms, and this is perhaps their best setup, given the fact that obviously there'll be no Rangers fans. You can debate the merits of if 800 fans makes a big difference, or if footballers can actually are mutually intelligible with fans and they just enjoy noise, as opposed to if they're singing for you or against you, is up to debate. But no, I think we're in a good position. I think obviously we need to see out the Ross County and the Liffey games. I think Morelos is a miss. He's naturally just his mantra, and his play style always helps away at Celtic Park. But I do think the fact that he's gone, probably we might start something with Roof, Kent Sakala, that works really well, and so much so that we'll have pace out wide, and given the fact that they'll probably dominate possession and we won't get too many chances, Roof is probably the best natural finisher and the best placed on the park to take some limited chances. So I do think Morelos is leaving. For Clemby, it's bittersweet. It's nice to see him back in the fold, and obviously it'd be nice to have him leading the line at Celtic Park. I'm sure he would love to do that after scoring a few times last season, but none in front of fans yet. So I'd be interested to see what he has ready for the Celtic fans at Celtic Park if he were to score at some point in his career there. But no, I do think we are set up quite well, and I do think their personnel deficiencies in both injuries and national team call-ups will be substantial. Ours less so, luckily.
Well, hopefully it'll all go well, and we'll cover that when the time comes. Looking at the time, guys, I think that's probably just about enough for tonight. So big thanks to Chris and to Patrick for their contributions tonight. Brilliant stuff, as always. We were live tonight. It was a Sunday night, but as always, guys, the pod will be available tomorrow on a variety of platforms, including Acast, iTunes, YouTube, Castbox, Stitcher, Spotify, all your usual places. We'll try and get something out on the Tuesday night for the Livingston game, get a preview show out. We'll obviously have a preview show next week for the Ross County game, and the main show will be back next Sunday night, so get onto that. In the meantime, get yourself onto the Gersnet website and forums at www.gersnet.co.uk. Until the next time, guys, bye for now.